Hello, I am Yuma Mudra. I am inviting you to come to the YouTube serial of videos called Masterclass Yuma. I will explain to you all about the Danza Duende Network, and slowly we will be more people to expose everything we have been doing and everything we can offer, so that maybe you find what you need to dance your life and to live your dance for the benefit of all beings. Much love.
Hello. This is the full moon of the miracles. So, thought it could be a nice day to do our number 6 of the Masterclass Yuma. So it is A6. So just for who is not yet into this process, we are publishing many videos in relationship with the Danza Duende Network, and it will have 3 kinds of sections. So the section A is about the origin and the structure and the philosophy of the Danza Duende as a network, but also as a training, and also how this started to exist, how it came in existence since 2004 officially. The section B will be more orientated into exercises. So this is my English. Welcome to my English. Actually, English is my basic language, but I don't speak it very often, so my English is improving as each video goes on. And so the section B is exercises, and maybe showing a few tools and relating the tools to what was the deep sense of the work that I explain in the section A. So the section B makes it a little bit more reliable into experience, and specifically for people who already did the training or who are training with other teachers. It gives them a common material to rely on, because all the exercises can be actually freely used in different frames of work or creativity of each teacher. But maybe it's very interesting that we do keep it in touch about the basics, the simple basics of each tool. And the section C is more in relationship with specifically how each person in the network has been evolving with these tools, or how can they be used in singing, for example, in music, in piano, in sculpture, in painting, or in cooking, or many other things. So it will be represented by many different people from different countries and different kinds of art, work. So please, if you may write some commentary under the videos, if you may like with that thumb that is there on YouTube, and share maybe if you can, and if you feel it's interesting for some people. It just helps the videos to keep on visibility, and that other people may encounter the video, because otherwise it just gets lost in many videos. And I also would like to thank people who are actually now helping on the translation. There is a translation team going on, so we decided for now, since everybody's waiting for me to to resolve a few things that I did not dedicate time to it, I'm becoming slow. So I have to look into YouTube how I could introduce the English writing, taping of what I've been saying in these videos, and probably that it is possible to have an automatic translation from the English. Voilà. I hope my video is going okay. I'm a little bit... I hope it's going okay. We will see. Hope so. Also, the podcast is going to exist, so it's not yet organized, but every video will have also a podcast channel, probably in Spotify, but I'm not sure yet. So we are taking the talks out of image so that it can also be in a podcast. So if you're interested, maybe sometimes it's easier to have it in a podcast. So I already talked about Danza, I talked about Duende, I talked about network, and then I talked about my own relationship with that, how this project started to appear in my life and in my mind, and then it started to really exist as a network of people. Why a network? And then I also entered a little bit more into a very deep relationship with the nature of mind as the center of the mandala, and how this mandala, which is your presence, has always the four elements expressing their nature as energy. So their nature into material, their nature into energy, and then their nature into how it is that you express your life, your offering to all beings. What is it that you are creating in the world that becomes part of that frame, the huge mandala made of all the mandalas. And these mandalas are in the same time as order and as chaos. Okay? So this is what I've been talking about. So now I'm going to talk a little bit on this full moon day of the miracles in the Buddhist tradition. This is the day of the miracles. So maybe we shouldn't let that day escape. So I would like to talk a little bit of how from the past of this project into nowadays what's been happening since 2000, late 2019 until now, 2022. Why does it make sense to do these videos about something that nowadays is a little bit on awaiting, no? Because as a network and as a school, Danza Duende doesn't really fully exist. It's completely anarchical so far. So why would we keep on transmitting it, talking about? And maybe this is what I need to do. I'm sorry, excuse me. I think, because I think there's a technical problem. And you know how it is. A talk, and you have to redo. So it's going to be much better. Yes. So why does it make any sense, and how am I present in this project now in a point of view that is a little bit more related to health, even though that doesn't make it any different. Basically, it's just that the healthy perspective nowadays makes a lot of sense. But also the reasons why this project was created was not only personal, it was also because I was always aware somehow since a young age that something was wrong somehow in the fact that the human being seems to me earth so rich and so valuable, and in the same time there was so much problems and so much suffering. So probably that's why I got so much in love and passionate about Buddha Dharma, because the teachings of the Buddha do relate with suffering, the causes of suffering, and the fact that it is possible to free oneself from creating causes of suffering, and that the nirvana is actually beyond the duality. So this awareness of something is wrong came very early, and it came together with an intuition that something would happen at one point. And I always, when I started to create the Danza Duende Network, I always told the people who were working with me that the world would change and that we had to take advantage of that chance we had at that time to do fully with a great freedom and without the need of too much means, to really live incredible experiences that were like quite comfortable somehow, no? Because we could maybe spend a whole week or 2 weeks only working on the breath, the sense of meditation, the sense of gesture, and creating different dances and going into the different worlds of creation. Because I did dedicate a lot of time to create situations that would not be, how would you say, private. So we did not show much of what we did. This is why it's worth talking about it also, but it's not only for that. It's also because at that time it was very important that we could have a part of our energy, our life, and our concentration that would be completely free from this need to show what we're doing and to acquire approbation, and even to make it some kind of a product that could be like commercial, no? So it's not a rejection of whoever it is could make money with its own work, of course, but it's more that it was really a luxury and a very important privilege that did happen to us for many years, that we could dedicate lots of times and lots of quality of presence into exploring our own soul and our own existence as human beings through the tool of dance, of course. But of course, in this case, dance is really a mind training in the same time as a body training and a breath training, the three. And so now it's different, no? Because now we never really know if the world is going to be, it's going to be possible to travel, it's going to be possible to meet. Maybe we make a project and then it doesn't work, things like that. Yeah? So we're online, but online it's not the same. It's interesting, but it's not the same, yeah, because you don't have the same relationship with all of the senses. It's my vids. I think I have an idea what's going on. I just need to do one thing here that may help, I hope. I hope so. Okay, and now another thing here that's going to help too. Come on, please. That's it. Okay, so. So I told my students at that time, I told them, we have to really get into this, because later it won't be possible anymore. Later it's going to be different. And so, of course, many of us were travelers, people who don't really stay always in the same place, most of us. And I was very much like that. So we really needed also, in the same time that we created these situations, we really needed that we could also maybe not stick together and not have a center, not have a school, not have really a material set up, but more something that is alive into space. It exists through our minds, actually, and then our will to make things happen. And as I explain in a video, which is the number 5, A5, it creates situations with certain people,
And so it has a moment where you open that container. Maybe the container is a project, a show, maybe it's a festival, maybe it's a book, maybe it's a training in a school, maybe it's a collaboration between different artists. But it has an opening of that container and a closing of that container. But there is awareness that all these situations of creation and of collaboration, they are what makes the network keep on existing, even if there's nothing going on for some moment, or maybe I'm very intensively linked to a few people for 3 years, and then suddenly one of these person just suddenly falls in love and doesn't want to do that anymore because now the marriage is more important, and that person needs more time and more mental disposition for what's going on in his own private life, things like that, children being born. Or sudden people that suddenly realize that suddenly they are fed up with the fact that they are always in some kind of a permanent offering, because that's the sensation it ends up giving, no? That even if you're not involved, you are always like given, no? And maybe sometimes it's really needed to become natural that you could be like that and feel comfortable with it. Maybe it's not always so easy. So why now would I talk about it in another way? And then next video, I will give the explanations of the project that were the classical ones, and I will give a little bit more precisely how it was organized and how later it became organized because of the arrival of Raji and the work with the breath. I will also explain this work with the breath as we did study and as we did experiment, and how I understand it. So that will be also the subject of one of the videos. So now the health and why. Why healthy? Because health is a holistic attitude in life. Health, in my point of view, is not so much only that you are lucky enough not to be sick and lucky enough to live a long life and to have enough water and food and shelter. It's, of course, these phenomena, of course, but it's something deeper. The health is to feel that it makes a lot of sense altogether, whatever happens, and that your deepest secret in your soul and the way you talk, the way you enter into relationship, the way you dance, the way you experience life, and the manifestation of your own person, all of this is not any problem. You feel a friendship in relationship with all of that. So the healthy thing is that whatever happens to me, I can accommodate. Like space. I talked about space, and space can accommodate everything. It's the center of the mandala. So the health has a lot to do with space. If there's no space, you don't breathe. If there's no space, the fire cannot burn. If there's no space, where is the earth? If there's no space, how would you dance? And of course, breath is movement, and what kind of movement is possible if it's not space? The time itself is not really existing as time. Time is a relative situation in space. So when we talked about the past, it's more a space in my mind than really something, that I would say the past, like yesterday, When you dance, it's so obvious, because when you dance, you're always on the spot, specifically if you don't have a previous choreographic, So if you're dancing and in the same time you're in the composition of that dance and you're making a ritual of that dance, and the ritual that you are making is putting you in relationship with archetype and with expression of deep symbolism, that's what happens slowly as you naked yourself from the emotions. First you have to work on emotions, so you're going to express emotions, and it's going to be related to who I am, who you are, who we are different and not the same. And then
when you go deeper, 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 you start to express things that you don't even understand very well. Where does that come from? So you create and you build that body of art. This is where the health comes into. So you need this body that is able to accommodate strong relation to energy, which is what we call emotion, but you don't live it anymore like your own emotion. So your body must be ready for that trance. That trance is going through. And trance and lucid means translucid dance. Lucid means that you are aware, even if your consciousness is completely different as the usual linear, rational consciousness. Like if you're whirling, like for 3, 4 in space, you are aware, and in the same time, you're completely letting go of the sense of control. So it is the paradox. There is a control going on, but the control is just sustained by the habit that you created. So this is what is the building of this body. It's a body that is able to change habits and to have some kind of safeness into movement. So the safeness also of how we bend the bones, or how we get up, how we go down, how do we use our back, or vertebra, how do we use the neck. So it's like you get into studying your body, because even if you study human body and all the human bodies are alike, your body is always unique. So how you relate to that in your age, because it's very different. Like when you're young, you need to sort out a lot of energy. It's very healthy. And when you get older, you have to learn also how to keep on preserving your energy and always going back to a source of youth. But that does not mean that you have to push your body too much, so that it cannot... the body cannot handle the same way it used to handle when you were young. And it's also the relationship you have with spontaneity. So it's a spontaneous gesture. It becomes spontaneous because you trained. So this dichotomy of the paradox is always there. It's because you trained into talking a language that you can naturally talk it. It's because you trained into driving a car that you could be aware and careful as you're driving, and this maybe you have a conversation, but you always have to stay aware of what's going on. And it's even in the car, it's even 3 things, because the more openness and space your mind has, the more aware you are, and the more you can be calm. Because if you're nervous, your relationship to reactions is not so good. The relationship with quickness, with having a quick, accurate relation with speed of a machine, like an airplane or whatever you're driving, a boat, everything that you're driving that goes quicker than your own body if it did not have this machine. Your mind needs to be completely clear, and in the same time very, very spacious. So this spaciousness of mind, and in the same time the clarity of concentration based on relaxation of the mind, is something that you can relate to gesture. And that doesn't mean that your gesture will have to be slow, or will have to be quick, or will have to look like so peaceful. Maybe your gesture can become very, it could even seem completely neurotic, but you're not neurotic at that moment. You're just using your vehicle in a specific way to express a specific kind of energy, because you are sharing with the world and with yourself something that may create a bridge, a bridge between this deepness of the treasure of our own being and the expressions of that life. So healthy in the sense that it is accurate, even if at one point you do get a cold or you do get some problems with your health. It's no problem because you can also deal with that. You don't feel that it is something that you need to reject. It's something that you can accommodate. And then you have an emotion. like you were in such a good mood and you were so happy, and then afterwards you feel you go a little bit down, and you were not expecting that something would bring you down. Maybe it's just stupid thing, you know. Maybe it's just because there's no more sunshine, it's raining, you know, for 3 days nonstop. I don't know, whatever. But you're not anymore in that relationship with emotion that is like, when it's, you know, when things are as I want them to be, I'm so happy, and when things are not what I want them to be, I'm so unhappy. You just live all the different relationship to the manifestation of light and darkness in your own person as something that you can accommodate. So you don't have to hang on to your beautiful side and to reject your bad side. You can really accommodate, and it's a very, very it's very nice, actually. It's very nice. So when you feel like your emotion is not as nice feeling as it's usually, you understand that it's just a cloud, and you can live with that. So that's a healthy relationship. And then your body got trained. So there's a healthy relationship to how I am present to listen to what is it my body is asking. He's asking me maybe to eat a little bit less, or maybe he's asking me to be careful about sugar. I don't know. It's not intellectual. It's not because everybody says you should eat like that, because it's not true. You can sit by yourself. No, some people are so careful and then they just get sick, and some people, they don't care about anything. They only do crazy things, and they're perfectly healthy. So there's not a recipe, and this is really not a recipe at all. It is more a relationship. And so the relationship between your deepest treasure of your own mind, as I talked in the A5, the ocean, or the deepness of the ocean, where it's very quiet and powerful and huge. And then this up there at the ocean, when you're on the top, you have winds, and you have the day and the night, and sharks, and all these things. No? So this relationship, maybe it starts to be a little bit something that you can ride it like a horse. You can ride that energy like a horse, it's like your breath. You see, this is the everybody knows, but even if everybody knows the breath is so important, are we really, really into it? You know, because it's not about doing it 1 hour sometimes, which is wonderful. It's about always being in relationship with all these different movements of life. So how I breathe, how my blood, how do you feel? Is your blood really circulating or not? Because you can feel it. And the more there is a time and space that allows you to be present to these listening of your own body, the more your body gives you messages that are completely direct. And it starts to be intuition. It starts to be something that actually slowly, you don't really know where it comes from, but you have to catch that thing. So like if somebody asks you, oh, what can I do? Please tell me, what can I do because I feel really so sad? Usually you would say, be sad, don't be sad, do this. Or maybe you have a methodology that you learned how to relate with somebody when he's not okay and all that. No problem. But what I'm talking about is different. Is that suddenly something comes to you and in a state of mind that you are not wanting to manipulate yourself, that person, or the situation. You know that that's not what's going on inside of you. You're completely free. You're completely there. And suddenly you do something because it was the first thought, best thought, and you trust it. And you can trust it because you learned how to check, but you don't have to check yourself like if you were some kind of a policeman. It's just that you are used to check that what comes out of you did not come out of you out of anger, out of jealousy, out of competition, out of pride, or out of dumbness. It came out really of clarity, and there is nothing happening inside of your body that is not true. You see, so in that case, what comes out could be whatever it is, you don't really know. It could be, sometimes I did experiment that myself. Sometimes you really need to be shaken, you know, like I remember once I was in an hospital, I was really feeling a lot of pity for myself. And that pity I was feeling for myself, even though, of course, I was in an experience of a lot of difficult, very, very heavy, difficult things. So it does make sense to have pity of myself, but it doesn't help. So at one point, the happened. I got like 3 different shocks coming to me. And one was a book that I read again, was the book of Trungpa Rinpoche, Shambhala. I read it once more, and then I really finally felt this is the first time I understand it in the hospital. I thought the book was so simple and so easy. I didn't realize that actually I needed to be in a social situation of weakness to understand it. And then a friend of mine, instead of coming and help me, told me, what the hell is going on? Don't feel pity for yourself. A woman like you doesn't go, astray. And, you know, I don't know why he told me that, but actually I was needing something like that because it was absolutely right. So maybe if he would come and say, oh, my poor, maybe it would have been so nice, actually. Yeah, I would have liked that, you know. But the message I got was useful for me. And sometimes this could happen, that what comes out of you is maybe politically correct and maybe not. Because it's exactly like when you dance, you know, maybe when you dance, you're doing a movement that is so, you know, so sensual. And then after you're going into something that is so martial, maybe, or so strange. All these different things can happen, yeah? But they don't come out of your desire to kill or your desire to make people afraid. Actually, you know, children, it makes them laugh, no? It comes out of something that you are in awe into all manifestations of the universe, of the energies. And so it comes out of love, you know, somehow. But it's not this image of yourself, you know, trying to find that you could seem nice and perfect and all that. It's really coming out of letting go of image beyond Narcissus. You know, Narcissus in the mythologic, he looks in the water, he's in love with himself. He doesn't really, it's like cats when they see themselves and they try to play with the mirror. You know? He doesn't really realize that it's his own image. And then he falls at the end in the water, and then when he falls in the water, he dies. And when he dies, he becomes a flower. So it's only after he went in the water and fall into that mirror that he actually is reborn as a flower. And that's the Narcissus, the flower. It's a little bit the same idea. The artist, and specifically when we dance, we can really, really get completely lost in translation. And nowadays with Instagram and all these things, it's even worse, no? So just be wise, you know. It's time to be wise. And health is wisdom, okay? So from the point of view of body, you're building a body of wisdom. And you're dealing with your energy the best as possible, because you are the one who is in charge of yourself. There's nobody else that can be in charge of yourself. So you are part of on an never-ending dance of many, many lives, all integrated. No, like my body is made of many beings, and I am in relation with many beings. I'm breathing many beings. I'm eating many beings, and they come out also, go to the bathroom and these things. It's always many beings, no? But at the end, my existence as now this body and this speech and this mind is my responsibility. So nobody can do it better than me. So this is something we really need to understand, that that nobody can deal with myself better than me. This is healthy. Yeah, you understand? So being friend with yourself makes a lot of sense. Who wants to live with a not friendly person? So you are your best friend. You don't have, nobody else is better friend than yourself. And this is very interesting because, of course, this healthy relationship with life, with accommodating, so the center of mandala is space, never ending, never starting. And since each breath always goes and come back in the same time, something that it's mysterious, you can't explain it, just relax. There's the clarity of the wisdom. There's also the richness of the wisdom. There's the heart feeling of the wisdom, this intuition, this mysterious knowing what each thing needs. And then at the end, there's the action. The action is bringing together all of these qualities, 5 wisdoms. So this is healthy. And then health itself, as being sick or not being sick, is much easier to relate with, because your relationship also with challenges and death is completely different, since you fell in love with being. Okay. I had to stop the video and start again, so now I'm with my phone. Actually, in the beginning of this video, I said there was some problem, and actually I don't really know why, but when I do it with my computer, at one point the computer starts getting tired, and then the sound doesn't relate to the image gets frozen, and then the sound goes on. So that's why you could see me double. There's the sound me and the image me. No problem. Anyway, the most important is probably the sound. So here I'm going to finish the video with the phone. It's the same video, so I'm always with that topic of the section A6, talking about health and the relationship of the training of the Danza Duende Network as a training and as a network of people with health. So this is the topic. And I already got a lot into the most important things I wanted to talk about. Also, the building of the body of wisdom, the building of the relationship with energy, of riding the energies, and the building of a bridge between myself as somebody who has lots of reactions, lots of amazing emotions and amazing concepts and thoughts, which is no problem, but in the same time that I did create a mind that is rooted enough into sanity that allows me to accommodate all of these different manifestations of my own self, but also of archetypa. So it gives me a very, very strong base so that I can not only do art into all the craziness of the psyche, I think it's Jodorowsky who said the psyche is like if you're in a boat in the middle of the ocean with all these storms and all that. I think it's him. I think he did, yeah. And Jung did a lot of work about that. Jung really did an incredible work on diving into his own insanity in order to find sanity. And what he did use to go through all of this is very interesting, is the work with stones. Because the stones, as our bones, is a material that is very, very slow. So it gives a sense of rootness, of steadiness. And I think, I don't know, I'm not Jung, but I think this really allowed him to dive into this
ocean, never ending and never starting ocean of his own psyche. And it allowed him to discover many things that maybe we need nowadays to understand more. I think nowadays we really, I mean, I don't know. If on one hand, it doesn't matter, because anyway, I'd really trust the universe. It doesn't matter that much, We were born, we will die, and whatever. So what, no? But on another hand, we don't really want people to suffer. We don't want to suffer ourselves. We don't want nightmares to be the everyday, what would you say, hell. No, we don't really want that. This thing that you live in a country and it's full of aggression and full of meanness and full of suffering, and that people don't learn how the goodness is good for themselves before it's good for others, and people get mean and they get selfish, and we don't really want that, do we? So if we don't want that, we have to really do something about it. But it's not, in my point of view, very useful to claim that it should be different. It's really useful that it is different already in your own right, your own self. As I was saying, we are in charge of ourselves. We cannot help. We cannot. We cannot expect other people to be in charge of our own self. So this healthy goodness is what allows us to accommodate experiences in a much larger frame, with a larger open mind. As Dzongsa Khyentse Rinpoche, get out of the box. Your mind in the box is very fragile, very weak, because nothing ever is going to be in that box forever. It's impossible. So you can get out, go back in the box, and then finally you realize that the box was just a creativity of yours. So what do I want to talk about to end this is two things. One is, what is the creation of different kinds of worlds? And the second thing I want to talk about is nowadays why this process, as a solitary process of improvement, not improvement of yourself, because yourself are basically full of treasure and goodness. It's more improvement of being aware of that and being really giving priority to that, and not giving priority to lots of things that are not so interesting, because at the end they won't create anything else than a sense of losing lifetime, and then it's finished. You don't know very well what's next. So as far as you have a human body, you can really use that human body for what is useful. Yeah, and that's what art is about, because art is very, very human, no, isn't it? So why does it make sense nowadays, and why is it so important nowadays, now that emotions are becoming nowadays in the world overwhelming, exactly as pollution and all the perturbated, it's like if all the 5 elements, they are being intensified in a way that is not livable. So if we want to make it more livable and in harmony, we need to deal with our own pollution first. And our own pollution is, first of all, in relationship with our mind. It's more that, because it's because of our minds that we do what we do, and we don't do what we don't do. So it's the mind that is in charge. And the mind is not a set of intellectual boxes. It's really this bridge of the relationship between the deepness of your own treasure, which is part of your nature and part of the nature of all living things. And as a human being, how do you express in the world this power of being human, the great power of being human? It is such a great power that it is such an enormous responsibility. And we women, if we do take care of children, we need to understand that in a way that is not in our box either. It's not the box of being a woman. It should not be a box neither. It's really like relating to the fact that human beings is relying on transmission. How do we transmit one to the other the healthiness of movement, of gesture, of life that allows us, human being, as we are so powerful, whatever we do, whether we think we are or not, we are powerful because we really create things. So this is when I'm going to come back to the creation of worlds that I just mentioned before. How can we be healthy in that great, great power which is part of ours and of our constitution? Actually, if we don't know how to use the power and how to ride the energies, we are destructive. We are completely destructive. Specifically because we are powerful and our tools are becoming the projection of that power, so it's making it even more. Why? Because we did create all of this out of ourselves and we need as much in as out. That's the bridge. You cannot have a car that goes very quick and not have inside of your mind the software of that thing, you know? And it's the same for computers and for Instagram and social medias and information. If you want to deal with all of the filters, how can you filter all these things that comes in your life? You need to have the inside software of that outside software. And so it's okay, you can remain healthy. Mm-hmm. And art is so good for that. So let's come back to conclude about ritual. And when you create a situation with many people in a room and they have this like a kind of music or kind of silence and a kind of setup, you can say maybe they're going to draw, let's say that they draw their home space. So they have the possibility to draw on the ground a circle or a square, whatever it is, or a line, and they're going to involve in that because they choose their home and they're going to, maybe it's big, maybe it's small. It can also a little bit touch each other. It doesn't have to be completely separated. But each one is doing his own, no? And then they involve in there. Of course, the situation will influence, of course, if you put music or another music or a light or a color, it will influence a clothes, another clothes, a feeling of perfume, or maybe it smells bad. Whatever is there is going to influence, of course. But you're creating this situation and you understand that when you use different kinds of things, it will create different kinds of sensation and feelings and how you say, styles, like a style. And also in that case, men and women do react quite different in this kind of ideas. You will notice that if you work with it. And if there is only woman or only man, it's different also, because when there's man and woman in the same room or not, it's different. And so you will notice that one person always slips into, like imagine if the music is a little bit calm and cold, slightly nostalgic, let's say, yeah, you will see that person slips into a kind of world. And then the other one slips into bliss. And the other one slips into hell. And it's very complicated because the person who slips into bliss maybe at one point loses the bliss and then feels disappointed because that bliss is finished. And then the person who slips into hell is not able to get out of there. And maybe you can help it get it out of there. Or maybe also that person can enjoy very much being in hell even if that person also doesn't enjoy it. So it becomes like this relationship to being hooked into the causes of suffering, which is something very, very, that happens very often, almost all the time. Yeah? And we don't know that we do that, no? But we discover that. And you understand slowly that each one of us are creating some kind of a universe that is or interpretation of that space and time and qualities of that moment. Of course, it's obvious, but it's not so obvious that we understand that we do it. It's obvious that, yes, of course, we know that's what happens, no? It's obvious that, like you have two persons, three persons, they witness the same thing and they saw something different. We know that. But you don't know it about yourself usually. So when you get into that experience, you start to check that you have a tendency to slip in here. And then if the situation is a little bit different, maybe you're going to slip into there. And if the situation is a little bit, like you could say, you have to experiment that situation always on the laying down. You don't get up. But you can dance, but you lay down. Or you have to go slower than the slowest you can. Or you have to be completely free. That's the worst one. When you tell people they're completely free, that's when it's so difficult. Because it's much easier when somebody tells you what to do. So all of these things, you start to understand, actually it's difficult for me to be free. It's difficult for me to not be frustrated because I felt happy and then after I don't. Things like that, those little things. And you start to understand about yourself, but then you also are living this relationship with other people in that room. And you can also create a situation where these people are going to be in relationship about that, different worlds that meet each other, no? Where they meet their own way of creating a movement and how this movement is full of a quality of experience and how when I learn with that person to be exactly in the same kind of form that she does. If that person is smiling, I smile also. If that person is doing like this, I do it also. If that person, and I start to slip into her shoes, no? And she slips into my shoes, and then I end up losing myself, and she loses herself, and you learn how you can let exist that third entity, that you don't get completely merged one in another, and in the same time you are merged one in the other. So in the same time you see how much we influence one in each other so much, and then in the same time you understand that if you relax, you keep on being yourself, because yourself is a person who's always influenced since the beginning. That's being born is mixing two persons anyway. Yeah. So you don't have to really fight to be yourself. It just works naturally because that's what happened. You have your body and you're yourself. So when you relax, it's easy to see that this meeting of me and her created something that becomes the third thing that we can both relate to. And it's really very easy with dance actually. But you could do it with music also. It's quite easy actually also. So this is something that is very interesting if you're not only into the fact that you want to produce something to give to people, which is wonderful and very important. On another hand, you're also producing it only in order to live it. So this is where the secret is interesting, because the more it is secret, the less we're going to have a tendency to put it in a box. And so it's much deeper when we live these things in secret, and that we let it live, because whatever you experience, I had this example on A5, no? When you experience something, I was talking about orgasm, but could it be something else? No, you experience something, if you don't put it in a definition, but you are really accurate about what you lived, you're not forgetting what you lived, but you let it be. It's like a sound, no? When you do this, the sound goes, and even if you don't listen anymore, maybe some kind of being with a better ear is going to listen, because it has like a wave, no? Like the light also has a wave, no? Like the light that is here goes there, and even if the sun shines, maybe there's no more sun, because the time the light goes somewhere, you can still see the light, but the sun is gone. You know that maybe. Like a star could be disappear and you still see the star because the light that comes to you, it has a relationship with time and space. So this is actually happening when we talk, when we dance, when we do everything. We are making waves, no? This is why it's so important, the wisdom. Because if you make waves of wisdom, you don't have to tell people that you're making waves of wisdom, because actually if you tell them, it's not that much wisdom. You just experience that, and the wisdom is not yourself. The wisdom is the nature of human kindness. I like to say, I call it kindness, the human kindness. So it's something natural. It's not something that is your own thing. It's just naturally possible. As you relax this ego trip and this fear all the time and this paranoia all the time, there is something that exists on itself, which is wisdom. And so this wisdom is what, when the ritual, it's going to express through different forms, because form is how people relate to life. So the forms, maybe I'm sensitive to the form of the Virgin Maria, and maybe somebody is more sensitive to the form of Jesus, and maybe somebody is more sensitive to Mahomet, and then somebody is more sensitive to the Buddha or to Dakini. Maybe we're sensitive to an animal, to Isis. Maybe you're sensitive to emptiness, and you just sit in front of the wall. Yeah. It's okay. It doesn't really matter that much, because it always ends up in the depth of the sea. So the artist is manifesting all of these richness of the forms, and each form is bringing a bridge between the depthness of the sea, or maybe not the depthness, maybe just the place where it's a little bit more moving. It depends where that creation comes from, what is the source. But anyway, the process of creating these rituals. So what I'm calling ritual is to live it each time, as I said, no, with the container of the mandala. So in the same time there's a structure, and in the same time there is the complete freedom that could be a chaos. And there's the riding of emotion, but in the same time the emotion could overwhelm you, but you don't get overwhelmed because you can surf with it. You know, you learned how to, you build that body, that speech or breath, and that mind that allows you to accommodate all kinds of things. And so each time you're creating a ritual with other people or alone, you are more and more getting free from the boxes. So you can create again that hell that you used to create, and you used to maybe have this bliss that you feel so frustrated because you lost the bliss. But you're not anymore frustrated, and you're not anymore caught in the box of hell, because you know that this is how energy is working. It's not something that you need to believe into in the sense of being trapped. So this is freedom. This is why actually we relate so much with the idea of freedom. And dance is so marvelous for that, because dancing has always been and will always be an expression of freedom. There's no way, there's nothing you can do about it, Even if dance can be used for wars, it can be used for sex, can be used for whatever it is. I don't know, it's so many things. But actually the basic thing about dance is freedom. That's why people, when they're happy, they like sometimes they just put up their arms and turn on themselves, things like that, or they do like this, because it's the expression of the sense of unlimited space. No, not born and not dead, not ending and not stopping. It's this depthness of being that suddenly becomes manifest as the body, the movement manifests that. So usually when people dance, they have this coming and going into this manifestation of their freedom, their basic freedom. So I think this is enough. It was about the health of the work. And because I did not explain this work once upon a time so much about health, I was more basically explaining the work about art. when I started, and nowadays, since all these events are happening, I'm a little bit given the how would I say, the motivation maybe for people who are interested, who already know this work, to look into how health is related to it and how healthy this can become. And specifically also when we work with the breath that Michel Raji has taught to the people in the network, this work with the breath is a very important key. Okay, so thank you very much.